Hi kids, welcome to today's video. This is going to be a big one for a Saturday, for a change. As I hit 800 subscribers, thank you to every single one of you who have stayed subscribed to me. It means a lot. I did put a call out there and ask people to suggest something I could watch, like a TV episode or a movie that I could review, something that I preferably haven't seen before. Well, one of my subscribers came up with the idea of the film ZARDOZ, which is a 1974 sci-fi epic starring Sean Connery. Now, I thought I've seen this film before because I do love 1960s, 70s and early 80s sci-fi. All pre-CGI stuff. Don't get me wrong, I love CGI stuff, I love modern stuff for the most part. But there's something... It's something nice. It's something I really like about pre-CGI era. I'm not putting the emphasis on CGI being a bad thing. I'm just saying that at some point CGI came in, but I'm using that as a timeline marker rather than focusing on CGI. It's just a case of maybe, let's say, off the top of my head, CGI around the time of things like The Last Starfighter, possibly that episode of Young Indiana Jones Chronicles where they had the CGI stained glass night that ILM first did. I mean, around that era, things started moving into more sophisticated special effects. But let's go practical, let's go back. And before Star Wars even, there was science fiction, but it was a lot less kind of... I mean, Star Wars changed everything, everybody knows that. So before Star Wars, there was still science fiction, but it was all done slightly more, I hesitate to say primitively. Anyway, I've talked long enough because this is going to be a long-ass video. ZARDOZ is such an interesting film. It's been derided by people who have seen this photo and gone, B-movie, trash, whatever. So I thought I'm not going to go into this video and ridicule it and mock it. I'm going to literally go through it blow by blow if I can, with as many stills as possible that I've managed to glean off the internet. It's very hard for me to get hold of ZARDOZ. Like a fool, instead of just paying £7 for a DVD off eBay, I rented it off YouTube, which was only valid for 12 hours. Then I bought it from Amazon Prime. I say bought, it's on the cloud, so I don't own it. So I should have just bought the DVD. Anyway, I'm not going to mock it. I'm not going to go, oh, this is terrible. I thought I'd watch it as a genuine science fiction fan and as a lover of 70s sci-fi and see what I can get out of it. Your results may vary. You may hate it. You may love it. I don't know how I feel about it, and it's been a couple of days. But it's like most 70s sci-fi for me. It's a curio. It's an interesting, quaint, very bizarre, but also quite, I said interesting. I could think of a better adjective. Anyway, let's get into, I've got copious notes to read, so I'll be talking over mostly stills, and we'll go through it blow by blow, and I'll give you my thoughts at the end. So come with me, dear viewer, hit that like and subscribe, and let us both discover the experience, that's a good word, the experience that is ZARDOZ. ZARDOZ, made in 1974, directed by John Boorman, British director. John Boorman was very... made some movies like Deliverance and others that are on screen right now that I can't remember, but he's generally regarded as a very good director. So he went into science fiction. Deliverance basically got him on the map, and for this film he wanted Burt Reynolds, who was also in Deliverance, but couldn't get Burt Reynolds, and a certain actor called Sean Connery wasn't doing very much He'd just finished, I think it was Diamonds Are Forever. Anyway, he'd just finished a Bond film and wanted to do something different. And goodness me, he did something different. And he worked a lot cheaper than Burt Reynolds. Anyway, the film starts off. A floating head appears on screen with a drawn-on moustache and beard and a tea towel on his head saying, "I am Arthur Frayne and I am ZARDOZ." He says that he's 300 years old and he's immortal, which throws you off the second you get there. You're like, okay then, what the heck is this all about? Anyway, that's a kind of precursor to the thing, and he talks about showbiz and all sorts of things, and you go, right, now I don't know where I am. He's not even setting it up as a believable universe. He's just saying this is like a fairy tale type thing, and it is very fairy tale-ish. Anyway, so we open. Let's quickly talk about our cast. So you've got the great Sean Connery playing a character called Zed. Not Zed from Police Academy. Zed. Charlotte Rampling as Consuela. Sarah Kestelman as May. And John Alderton as Friend. Okay, the film opens with a floating stone head in the sky. This is probably one of the most enduring images from ZARDOZ, is this bearded stone head floating in the sky. So it's kind of like a spaceship. It's floating in the sky, and they're on the ground are men on horses yelling, "ZARDOZ, ZARDOZ," and they've got their sort of papier-mâché style heads that are reminiscent of ZARDOZ itself. But what is ZARDOZ? So it starts talking to them. A voice bellows out, "ZARDOZ speaks to you." And then it says a phrase which is very funny and possibly the wrong way around. It says, "The gun is good and the wiener is evil." It doesn't say wiener, but I'm trying to keep it clean. Surely that should be the other way around. Anyway, all of a sudden, out of its mouth comes guns and ammo. Rifles and rifle shells come pouring out of the mouth of this ZARDOZ head thing, and much to the joy of the men, including Sean Connery, on horseback below. More opening credits, and all of a sudden, our hero, quote-unquote hero, Zed, wakes up inside the head. He was buried in gravel, or grain, actually, because the exterminators, for that is Sean Connery's job description, is their job is to plunder as much grain and food and meat and things like that and deliver them to ZARDOZ. Okay, so he climbs out of all this grain and walks around the head, and he sees bodies wrapped in plastic and piles of what looks like skulls. And now we're 9 minutes into the film. It's very atmospheric, it's nicely shot, and it's not too crazy yet. It's intriguing. Once you get past Sean Connery's, very interesting look, I think it's the furthest away from James Bond as you can imagine. Once you kind of accept, right, this is our guy, and you stop sniggering, you accept it, it's fine. So he's a kind of, he's like one step up from Conan the Barbarian, basically. He's just got a gun, that's all. Anyway, he's creeping around in the head, and he sees Arthur Frayne, the head from the beginning. But he's not a head, it's a full guy who's basically in charge of this floating head. And Connery does what a primitive like him only knows to do, which is to shoot him. And he falls or floats out of the mouth, presumably to his death. So the head kind of crash lands in a place which is quite a picturesque valley, and in the bottom corner is quite a nice matte painting of this sort of mansion house, farmhouse type arrangement. And Zed climbs out, and he's at a kind of farmhouse. So he goes exploring and sees plants in inflatable balloons, and it's like a village, and it does feel a little bit like The Prisoner. Remember The Prisoner from 1967 67, that I had a massive fixation with a year or so ago? So he's looking around for stuff. He climbs it. He goes indoors to search around. And we're now at the 13-minute. This is my 13th note, and we're at the 13th minute, so that's quite good. Zed hasn't spoken a word yet. This is a kind of film that is very much like 70s and 60s sci-fi. There's a lot of interpretation needed. They leave it up to the viewer. They don't explain everything. They don't spoon feed you. You've got to make your own mind up about what you're seeing and hearing. So Zed is looking around, and he sees props and set dressing and skeleton, a fake skeleton, theatrical stuff, trinkets, a jack-in-a-box, and he finds a ring with a white or clear stone on it that projects a list of what is called surpluses and needs. And Zed says his first line, food, meat, who lives here? So we're getting the idea that obviously all this stuff that was collected by the Stonehead under the guise of ZARDOZ is some kind of supplying system or service to whoever lives here. He plays around with the ring for a while and sees holograms, including Arthur Frayne. And outside is a kind of a mansion house. Zed goes back outside and asks the ring to identify a flower to test it, and it does so. So it's connected to some kind of, I imagine, artificial intelligence. Suddenly, he sees a topless woman on a horse. There is lots of toplessness in this film. We'll get into that later as calmly as possible. This character is called Avalo. She's played by Sally Ann Newton, and she looks a bit like a young Anna Paquin from the X-Men movies. Anyway, he runs to the lakeside and takes a drink. Then he sees another character called May. This is the character played by Sarah Kestelman, and she's approaching. He shoots her, but it doesn't harm her. He gets a sort of headache and gets knocked back, so there's some sort of psychic powers going on. Zed thinks he might be dead. May wakes him up and says, "Where do you think you are?" He says, I must be dead because I was shot, and if you die, you go to this place." And he thinks he could possibly be in some kind of heaven. Anyway, May is psychic, as are most of the people in their thing, and he explains that he says, "My name is Zed, James Zed." No, he says, "My name is Zed, and I'm an exterminator." So, my 20th note, and I'm on the 20th minute. I seem to be writing one note per minute. Now he's lying in a glass atrium with nude bodies all over the glass. Very strange. I don't know if I can put this picture up, but may have to censor some of this stuff. There are videos playing on the screens of his memories, the brutals that he's exterminated. So there are three races in this sort of this world we're in. It's obviously Earth in 2293. The brutals are the sort of primitives. The exterminators are him and his lot on horseback, who basically supply ZARDOZ with food in exchange for guns and stuff. And these immortals, basically, who have got psychic powers. Consuela, played by Charlotte Rampling, arrives. I've got to say, Charlotte Rampling, flipping heck, what a good-looking woman. She's beautiful. So the women want to find out what happened to Frayne. Remember Arthur Frayne, who Sean Connery shot? It's revealed that he died, and they say reconstruction has begun. And they do focus briefly on an embryo in a plastic bag, so they seem to be regrowing anyone who dies. So they're immortals in this way. So Zed is taken to stand among a lot of people who are watching his memories of violence and killing, which is basically his life. Some of the women have Princess Leia hair. It must be a 70s thing. Friend, this is the John Alderton character. Friend is a very strange camp kind of guy with a curly blonde wig who looks like a Thal from the Doctor Who universe. He's very curious about Zed and wants to get to know him more. May says we should study him. Friend says let's keep it. So they all do a group vote, and they vote to let him live. We're at the halfway point. We see Zed is kept in a cage, a bit like George Taylor from Planet of the Apes. And Friend says, if I need, you come with me. So basically, he warns Zed that if you try to attack me or threaten me at all, I can psychically kill you. And he's not lying. So they end up going to this room full of statues, paintings, and old art. Friend, I assume, is some kind of curator. And after that, Zed enters what can only be described as a mirror pyramid. He's being examined again. So there's lots of examination going on. We're at 35 minutes in the film now, and there's still no actual exposition. They just lay the events out for you, and you've got to make sense of it as you see fit. All we know is that there are these immortals. They're in a place called the Vortex, and Zed is an exterminator working for something called ZARDOZ. Anyway, it does feel like a play. I'm fairly sure with minimal stage dressing and props, you could probably put this on as a play. But what it feels more like, I'll tell you near the end. Zed starts working in a bakery. He is working with a bunch of women who are very kind of quiet and subdued, and they make this very long, weird kind of green bread. And he pulls Friend's bread cart, a bit like a rickshaw, and then they go to see the renegades. Now, the renegades are old people living in some kind of dilapidated funhouse. And it turns out that the old people, these renegades, have been artificially aged up and made useless and basically senile and left to basically fend for themselves. They are given some bread and stuff, but basically they're kept in this sort of funhouse as some kind of punishment. So they go back to town. This does look like Wales, but it's actually filmed in County Wicklow in Ireland. There's a stage here where Zed is confused as to why everyone's so subdued. So he gropes a woman who doesn't really resist, which is a little bit unsavory in today's climate of right and wrongness. But this was the back end of the 60s and the kind of the far out 70s. So there's like I say, there's some nudity and stuff going on here. Very strange. It turns out that the villagers are called the apathetics. They're very, very kind of, they've lost their joie de vivre, as it were. They're very almost mute, quite dumb. They're just subservient people. Much like the proles in 1984. Zed is getting frustrated, throws a bit of a tantrum, throws some tables around. Then we cut to Consuela, so Charlotte Rampling, lecturing her people about stiffies. They are surprised and interested that their society no longer needs to procreate. I'm going to be very careful with my words here, just because I don't want the algorithm to downvote my video. But there's this, it's probably unintentional, but it's hilarious scene about Consuela pointing to a board and saying, look at this drawing of a stiffy. It goes from this to this, and this primitive, this exterminator, Zed, is still capable of doing this kind of action because he is very primitive, and we no longer need that kind of thing. We can just reconstruct people as we see fit because we're immortal. I don't know how they got their immortality. I don't think it's even touched on. So they're fascinated. So they bring Zed in and they show him some videos that may be stimulating to him, and it has no effect whatsoever. They show him some mud wrestlers, still no effect. He spends a lot of his time ogling Consuela, and thank goodness we're spared it, but everyone kind of looks below his waistline and goes, oh, he's reacted to you, and Consuela's quite offended by this. And she's like, oh dear me, not fussed about that. And everyone thinks it's quite funny that Consuela is the person who floats his boat, for want of a better word. So in the morning, Consuela visits him in his cage, and she thinks it's really strange that he has to sleep, because they don't even sleep either. She's like, he's done 4 hours of sleeping. And she said, what's it like? Do you enjoy it? And he's like, yes, because I enjoy my dreams. I'm assuming he's dreaming about her. Apparently sleep became obsolete and meditation took its place. So they're quite a bored society. Rich, overprivileged. There's not a lot of fun left in their lives. So May says, where previously she said we should study him, now she's saying he should be destroyed because they're quite scared of him because he's so different. They have a group meal, and at the group meal, Consuela says, I want him sent out, because Zed being around to serve bread and everything is disturbing, and she's like, I don't want him here. So Consuela says to everyone, like, I want him destroyed. So they have a group vote again. The result of the group vote is that they give May 7 days to finish studying him, and then he should be terminated. Okay. In this scene, a friend, John Alderton, reminds me of a young Stephen Fry. John Alderton is famous for British sitcoms. There was one which I can't remember, the name will be on screen. But he is a very sort of upper class, educated kind of guy. Very kind of charming, a little bit too posh for my liking, but he is he was a very, very long career, John Alderton. And he's it's interesting to see him so young in this as well. So the people are forcing Zed psychically to go, they force Friend psychically to go to a second level of meditation. He says, I don't want to go to second level. And he is cast out, and he kind of conks out and, like, for all intents and purposes, seems to be dead on the table. Zed runs off. He runs off as far as he can, and he approaches a force field, which is a kind of pane of glass in reality, and he's squashed up against this pane of glass, and that is the barrier between the vortex where he currently is and the outside world where he used to live, where he could do his exterminatory things. So he runs back to the Renegade's funhouse and asks for Friend. Finally, he sees Friend. So basically, Friend didn't die. They have given him the Renegade treatment. They've started aging him. Only half of his face is aged, so he's young on one side, old on the other, and the makeup is rather good. It's prosthetics and looks good. And Friend does a speech which starts off with, now hear this, you old farts, which is unintentionally hilarious. The Renegades call for Zed's death, and I think Friend's death. And Friend says he wants death for everyone. So Friend is a bit of a nonconformist. He realizes that immortality is not the blessing that it's promised to be, and it gets a bit boring. So why can't they have death to sort of give meaning to their lives? Friend takes him to see the old man, who is a scientist who created something called a tabernacle, which keeps people immortal. Like I say, there's not much explained about how this is done, but there is this thing called the tabernacle, which is a kind of, I don't know, crystal-based artificial intelligence. The old man says, go and talk to May. So once again, she psychically interrogates his memories, and there is a flashback to him and his exterminator buddies hunting and killing and taking women and doing whatever they want. And they're riding around, shooting people left, right and center near this building. And he sees a face in a window and shoots at it, and then goes inside to see if if what he shot or who he shot is still alive. And he ends up in a kind of indoor library, and someone shows him a book at the end of the corridor. Zed, for some reason, spares him and grabs this book. He'd never seen a book before, and he says that he learned to read from that book, and he read every book in the library, making himself much more intelligent than the rest of his compatriots. May discovers that Zed killed Frayne, and explains that he killed his own god kind of by accident. Zed's memories shows May all about ZARDOZ arriving in the Stonehead to take the harvest, and this is supposed to be a kind of revelation that the first book that he was shown in the library was The Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz. ZARDOZ. Gasp. Spoilers. So we're at the 1 hour mark, and weirdly enough, this is my 60th note. I'm doing quite well. I hope you're still with me. Zed explains that The Wizard of Oz was about a man scaring people, posing as a powerful being. And May says this was Frayne's idea to control the Outlanders, which is anyone outside the vortex. Ironically, or coincidentally, Outland is the name of another Sean Connery movie, which is basically a sci-fi film set in space, obviously, and it's a remake of the Western High Noon. So basically what happened at the start was Zed stowed away in the head, asking his Outlander buddies to cover him in grain so he could sneak in there. He stowed away to find out the truth and maybe get revenge on what's, whatever this ZARDOZ thing is. It turns out that ZARDOZ is a fictitious name for a god based on the Wizard of Oz book that Frayne used to help get supplies to his friends, the Immortals, in the Vortex. May, for some reason, decides to snog him under a blanket, but they're discovered by Consuela. Against the psychic onslaught, Zed resists and manages to snog Consuela. Snogging going on here. I'm sure that was written into Sean Connery's contract. If you're going to shut me up in a film with lots of half-naked, good-looking ladies, I need to snog them all. But after snogging Consuela, he's rendered temporarily blind. Let that be a lesson to you kids. In the plant bubble, Avalo, remember her, the topless woman on the horse? She's still topless, by the way. She restores his sight and gives him a leaf to eat when he's weak, and says this will restore you when you're weak. Super convenient, that. She explains that the world was dying and the few rich, powerful and clever cut themselves off into this area called the Vortex. Consuela and the others storm the bubble trying to kill Zed. He manages to escape and runs to the periphery shield, the force field again, pursued by Consuela and co on horseback. He runs back to the village of apathetics. Consuela and co burn the houses to smoke him out. As he's hiding in one of the houses, one of the apathetic women licks a bead of sweat from him, and they pass it on. And it does something bizarre to them. He must contain some chemical that brings their life back, their energy. So they all start passing it on via kissing each other, restoring life from Zed to themselves. There's a lot of semi-orgy weirdness, and he's feeling a bit sort of overwhelmed and weakened, so he eats the restorative leaf just as Consuela finds him. He runs again, hides from the pursuers in the woods. At night, the renegades all come out, having some kind of weird parade with funny head masks and smoke bombs on sticks, I don't know. Basically, the apathetics are all a little bit horny. Consuela is still looking for Zed. She asks friend and everyone, where is he? And he's like, I think he went that way. We saw him going over there. It turns out that Zed was disguised as a bride. What a great picture. May finds Zed and the friend in the statue room. She asks Zed to inseminate us all. Maybe she wants a cure for the immortality or the enlightenment that it brings. He doesn't, though. We're now at 1 hour 10 in the film, so we're not far off the end. There's a very trippy, dreamy scene with lots of projections on faces and people spinning around in the dark and lots of toplessness. Again, I don't pretend to understand half of this. Zed wakes up and friend says the place was a spaceship. I'm sure he's talking about the ZARDOZ head, but I thought at the time he was talking about the vortex itself. He says the renegades were the scientists and the immortals were their children. And there's a flashback to sort of prove that. Zed says that tabernacle needs to be destroyed. He starts shooting the bodies that are planted onto the glass walls that we saw at the start, and it has no effect, really. Avalo, the woman, shows him a crystal and says, look into it. He says, I see nothing except my own perplexity. He has now changed his costume. He's still pretty much shirtless, but he's dressed a bit more like one of the immortals now in a nice red outfit. He meets Frayne, who shows him a crystal ball, and still he sees nothing. Consuela and the others break in. She finds Zed, brings out a huge knife and tries to stab him, but she can't bring herself to do so. I think she's beginning to fall for him in a weird way. I think her fascination has taken over. She admits she's become a hunter like him. Yes, because she's on horseback trying to kill him, much like he was on horseback trying to kill the Brutals back in the days of living with the Outlanders. She gives him a ring. He sends her away, and she says, the Brutal's not here, so she's protecting him now. He asks the ring, Tabernacle, what are you? The Tabernacle's voice says, that is not permitted. Now, the Tabernacle, I was convinced that the voice of the Tabernacle, I was convinced was Michael Gough, known to Doctor Who fans as playing the Celestial Toymaker, but known to most of us as playing Alfred in the first 4 Batman movies. The 2 Tim Burton ones, the Val Kilmer one, and the George Clooney one. He played Alfred Pennyworth in that. Turns out it's not Michael Gough. Sounds exactly like him. It's an actor called David DeKeyser. So, no idea who he is. Suddenly, Zed seems much more intelligent and calmer now. I think he's enlightened. His intelligence comes to the fore. The crystal is the Tabernacle, apparently, this big crystal, and Zed says he needs to destroy it. At 1 hour 30, I'm on note number 91, so I've just gone past the 90 note number 90, and we're at 90 minutes in the film. Zed suddenly finds himself in the Tabernacle, which is a very surreal mirror space, much like the ending of Enter the Dragon, where Bruce Lee is in that room, Hall of Mirrors type of thing. We're on to the last bit of notes, so thanks for sticking with me. There are faces all around him. It's very surrealist, and he thinks he's going mad. Tabernacle says, you found the floor. We are gone. You are alone. I'm not sure what that means. He ends up shooting a doppelganger of himself. And when the mask falls off, he sees his own face, which is very reminiscent, except it happened before, the Luke Skywalker scene in The Empire Strikes Back when he faces Darth Vader. Spoilers, defeats Darth Vader, and the mask breaks off, revealing Luke's own face. And he's like, what does this mean? But basically, this happened before. Maybe George Lucas took a little bit from that. The renegades and the apathetics start destroying all the statues and the props as they sort of run riot around the place. Zed is now unconscious. The apathetics and friend and Consuela revives him with a kiss. That's sweet, isn't it? He says, Zed basically leads everyone out of the statue room and says, stay close to me. I've got to stop doing this Sean Connery voice. He says, stay close to me. Stay inside my aura, which is just a funny line. It just sounds quite trippy and, hippie-ish. So as he's walking everyone through the statue room, all the footage is played backwards and the destruction goes backwards, obviously. It's a bit like Backwards from Red Dwarf. Friend asks how things now stand, what's next? And he gives Zed gives the old man, the scientist, the crystal, and the old man says, the vortex is an offense against nature, but nature made you. And then the old man dies, and the stone head falls from the sky again. Zed gives May the crystal and asks everyone to look into the crystal, presumably to restore their mortality. Frayne is back. He comes back and he says that he is the one who led Zed to the Wizard of Oz book. He was the one in the library who handed Zed the book in order to get him to read it and get more enlightened. They all head for the outdoor pond where Avalose starts singing, and they all start saying, we're all mortal again. That's nice. She asks Zed to liberate her. In other words, shoot her this time. And he can't bring himself to do it. Maybe he's a bit more evolved now. But all of a sudden a gunshot rings out and she gets shot in the neck and falls into the pool. Turns out the Outlanders have arrived on their horseback and start shooting and stabbing everyone. How they got through the force field, I'm assuming, is because the tabernacle is destroyed and the force field must be down. So they start shooting and stabbing everyone in a very bizarre extended scene and montage. I guess they're granting everyone the freedom from immortality that they wanted. There's the house, the mansion house explodes. Nice little miniature shot there. You could tell it's a miniature because the fire doesn't scale down like a real fire would, so the fire looks a bit big. It looks a bit like a Thunderbird shot. Friend meets up with Frayne and they talk about, let's die together, it would be nice. And they end up getting killed by the Outlanders. But they seem quite happy about it. Zed and Consuela escape and reach the stone head, and they go inside and they embrace and they essentially fall in love. A quick cut back to the mansion, and this is where I said I would tell you what the film felt like to me. It feels like a Monty Python film. Obviously without the cast of Monty Python, but it's of the same era. It's shot the same. It's quite bizarre. It's quite surreal, and there's some hilarious bits. And this scene here, you see a bunch of renegades, basically old men in suits and ties and, you know, sort of opera house gear, playing trumpets and violins and stuff as they get shot and fall over.
Please, kill me. I want to die. Please.
And I don't think it's meant to be funny, but it's hilarious. It feels so Monty Python. It's unbelievable. It does feel like a Terry Gilliam film, and I love Terry Gilliam's films. I think if you did a redub, there's an idea, if you did a redub of ZARDOZ, you can make it into a proper Python comedy. So yes, that's what I think it feels like. So basically the old band are getting shot while playing. The Brutals call for Zed amid the bodies, and he's nowhere to be found. And we cut back to Zed and Consuela in the stone head, and she's already pregnant and giving birth. That went a bit quick. And as things speed up, we start seeing a montage of Zed sitting on the left of the screen and Consuela on the right. And to begin with, she's feeding a baby, which I've had to censor. And then this baby grows up into a boy in a sort of weird, not a time lapse, it's more a montage fading into each other as the parents get older and older. They age and decompose. It's very trippy. They turn into just skeletons with wigs on, which is unintentionally hilarious. And at the very end, we focus on the wall behind them, which has 2 handprints and a rusty gun. And that, ladies and gentlemen, set to these strains of Beethoven, is how the film ends. Thanks for sticking with me. We're at 39 minutes according to my timer. Now, obviously I may have spoilt it for you, but if you're interested in the film, go watch it. I'm not saying you have to watch it. I watched it so you don't have to, but you can if you want, because it's a very interesting slice of 1970s sci-fi, when sci-fi was less the feeling for sci-fi in the 70s was less about adventure and more about self-reflection and looking in. Things like THX 1138, George Lucas's first proper film, was all about the human condition, and this is very similar as well. It's a sci-fi framework, and there's lots of interesting kind of nuggets of what is immortality like, what's the power of the human mind, if procreation is no longer needed or practiced, you know, what does that do to people? It's a very bizarre look at it, and it's a curious film. While I was looking for this film to watch in order to review it, I was like, I don't really want to buy it if it's a really bad film. And after a couple of days of thinking about it, I probably will buy it to go on my shelf with my other 70s sci-fi movies like THX 1138 and Dark Star and Planet of the Apes, obviously. There's something about 70s, as I say, practically filmed, mostly in shot, in camera effects and stuff, that gives it a sense of tangibility, if that's a word. It feels a lot more real and tangible. Again, I'm not saying it's going to be everyone's cup of tea. I still find it very strange, and I'm not sure if I understood the entire movie myself. I've even watched a few reviews online trying to explain the film, and apparently John Boorman himself, you know, has said that the film didn't quite work out the way he wanted. There are certain parts of the film that didn't go to plan, and he changed things, and he wasn't sure about some of the concepts, and he wrote the flipping thing. So I think it's perfectly forgivable if you don't understand the film entirely. Neither do I. But it's more of an experience than a story. I think it's something you just sit there and watch, let it wash over you, laugh at the funny bits, be intrigued by the other bits, and try not to get too concerned with the amount of topless people. Again, very liberated 70s thing, I guess. But if I had to describe how I feel about it, I kind of enjoyed it. It's a slow burn, despite all the action. There's a lot of running left, from one place to the other and running back again. And Sean Connery plays it dead straight. I've seen reviews saying he looks embarrassed to be there, but he doesn't. Sean Connery is not just a Bond actor. He's done comedies, he's done experimental stuff, he's done theatre. He's had quite a varied career in his life, and this was just a change of gear for him, in more ways than one. A change of outfit and a change of style and a change of role. And he plays the macho man who starts off quite uncivilized and then grows into enlightenment quite well. Love him or hate him, Sean Connery is a watchable actor, and it's always interesting to see this stoic Scot doing his stuff. I wonder if ZARDOZ could be remade today. I wonder if the bones of it could be stripped down into a story that was equally allegorical and futuristic, but minus some of the nebulous weirdness. I think it probably could be done. It's just a story about a fish out of water, basically, in a world that is far beyond his, and him essentially becoming the savior of it through his uniqueness. The things that make him different is the things that the new society, the modern society, kind of misses and craves. It's a very, very, I keep saying bizarre or interesting, and it is. But by some people's token, you might not be able to get 5 minutes into it because you might be like, oh, this is just stupid. It depends what you want to take from it, I guess. But I kind of understand the charm of it now. Most people have seen this image, obviously, of Zed and just thought, well, this is clearly Sean Connery's lowest ebb, his lowest point. But it's not as bad as they say. It's not as bad as you imagine it to be. It's certainly an experience. Anyway, this has been a very long video for a Saturday. I hope you've got some kind of idea from my very poor grasp of the English language of what this film is about. And thanks for the suggestion. I believe it came from JD, who suggested I watch ZARDOZ. Again, I thought I'd seen it. Maybe I saw it as a kid. Maybe it was played on the BBC or ITV back in the 70s or 80s. I don't know. I don't recall seeing any of it. I remember seeing clips. The clips we always see are Sean Connery on horseback and the floaty head, and that's about it. But turns out I haven't seen it, so it was an interesting watch. Anyway, guys and gals, I don't know what's happening on Tuesday. Obviously, I will be back with a video on Tuesday. I don't know what it's going to contain. But if you're still with me this late in the video, please consider hitting the subscribe button if you haven't, because I'm trying to do as much different sci-fi as possible. I inevitably keep falling back to Doctor Who because that gets the most views. But I'm trying to cover as much sci-fi as possible, weird and wonderful. And I do have a playlist of me reviewing all of Babylon 5, and I've only got 2 seasons into it, and I've got 3 more to go. So I will be getting back on the Babylon 5 as soon as I can. On top of that, builds, Dalek customization, props, models, all kinds of little things like that. So if you like your sci-fi and geekiness, stick with me. Anyway, I've spoken enough. I'm completely hoarse. I need to see you soon. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to Terry Cooper's YouTube channel. Cooper's an utter and complete and total gimboid, but do it anyway.